I will show you how to make charts that look like this. Don't forget to watch until the end as well, because I'll share with you another thing you can add to charts to make them more interactive. Charts and graphs are two commonly interchanged words, but are slightly different. So to make things less confusing, I will be using the word charts more instead of graphs. For our first task, the first thing we need to do is to add a new sheet that will contain all our graphs. To do that, we'll click the plus icon below here. This inserts a new sheet. After that, we'll simply rename up the graphs. And with that, task 1 is finished. We will color task status green so that indicates that the task is finished. Time to move on to the second task. Our second task requires us to make a line graph called 2022 monthly sales. This is likely to display how many sales we've made in each month for the year of 2022. We will first go to the sales tab and then select the sales table. We'll go to table design and then summarize with pivot table. We will select new worksheet, click OK, and that'll put the pivot table we need in another separate sheet. To keep things organized, we'll call the sheet 2022 monthly sales. Now, if you want to understand more on how pivot tables work, then you can check out this video here as well, which will give you more information about how pivot tables work. We will also rename the pivot table itself to 2022 monthly names. Oh wait, not monthly names. Monthly sales. Now you'll see here this blank pivot table. If you select it, a sidebar will appear called pivot table fields. These things right here with a box to the left of them are called fields, and these 4 boxes here are called areas. These two things are used to organize data within pivot tables. We will first put the sales date field in the rows area. And then if you see here in the rows area, the sales date split into many more fields. We just need the months, so we will remove both days and the sales date field itself. After that, we will put the sales number field in the values area. We will click the drop-down arrow, select value field settings, and then we'll summarize the value field by count. This is because we don't want to get the total of the values of all the sales number entry per month here. We just need the amount of sales per month. Now this is where the chart making will start. We will go to the pivot table analyze tab and then click on pivot chart. Go to line, select the only available chart right here, and then click OK. Now since we have this graph, this is basically all we need. We will move this over to the graph sheet and then we'll just put this anywhere we want. We will rename this chart 2022 monthly sales. And we should be finished for the second task. Since we no longer need this sheet, we will now hide it by right-clicking it and selecting on hide. We'll color the second task status green, and we're finished for the second task. Time to move on to our third task and our second column for the day. Our third task is pretty much the same as our second task. We just have to replace the sales date field by the country field when making the pivot table. We'll first go to the sales tab once again, and then we'll select the sales table. Go to table design, and then summarize with pivot table. That'll create make sure to choose new worksheet, click on OK, and that'll create a separate sheet. We'll call this new sheet 2022 sales. Oops. by country. We will also rename the pivot table by the same name. Like what we did previously, select this blank pivot table and a sidebar will show up. Ignore this format shape because I was doing some formatting earlier. We'll close this for now. We just simply need to put in the country field in the rows area and then put the sale number field in the values area. We'll go ahead and summarize the sale no field by count. Go to Pivot Table Analyze, click Pivot Chart, and this time we'll make a clustered column. Select this chart right here, click OK, and the graph has been made for us. We will first rename the chart and then right after, we will transfer this to the graphs sheet. If you're wondering how I'm transferring graphs, I just use Ctrl X, which I cut the graphs, and then I paste it using Ctrl V. We'll color the third task status green, and we're finished for the third task. If you're enjoying this video so far, then a like would be greatly appreciated. This really motivates me to upload even more content with better qualities to make sure that you, my precious viewers, can gain more knowledge in shorter amounts of time, and also how to apply it. For our fourth task, it seems that we need to format our graphs to look more visually appealing. And yeah, as you can see, there are a lot of things we can do to tidy this up. Thankfully, I've checked the task beforehand, so I've got a checklist right here, which we can use to format both of the charts much faster. Now before we start formatting the charts themselves, let's first organize the positioning of the charts and the look of the sheet itself. We'll first select one of the charts, go to the Format tab, Align, and then turn on Snap to Grid. This allows the charts to automatically snap to the cells of the spreadsheet itself, making things look more organized. Also, you might find these pivot chart fields in the sidebar annoying, so it's fine to close it off. We won't be needing it anymore. After that, we will go to the View tab, turn off the grid lines. Since that is done, time to move on to the actual chart formatting. Let's start off with the cluster column, or what you commonly known as the bar chart. We will first hide all field buttons by right-clicking this, and then hide all field buttons on chart. Before we continue, we'll change the chart style to a specific one by going to Design, and then selecting Style 4. After that, we will select the chart itself, go to Format, Shape Outline, then No Outline. It makes the chart part of the sheet itself. To make things easier, we will right-click the chart, and then Format Chart Area. This opens up a sidebar that allows us to format the chart in a more precise way. We will be using this much more for the rest of the formatting we're gonna do. Now just a quick note here, this is just my way of formatting, so you don't have to copy everything I'm doing for the charts that you're gonna make. This is just a guide for you to follow. You can also choose other styles if you want. That's totally fine. I'm just specifically choosing Style 4 for this specific video. Now you can see that the chart has a gradient fill. We will remove that by simply selecting No Fill in the fill options in our sidebar here. Since our boss likes the color green, we'll make the color of the bars themselves green. We'll select the bars themselves, which will automatically select all of them for us, and then click this icon right here, if you're not already here, which is the fill and line icon. We will change the fill form from automatic to gradient fill. We will scroll down a bit, and then we'll first delete these two gradient stops. Oops, so let me move this over here. There we go. Now for the first gradient stop, we will select this shade of green. For the second gradient stop, we will select a darker shade of green. After that is finished, we will change all fonts to Montserrat by selecting the entire chart and changing font style to Montserrat. And the next three I'd suggest are more optional, but in essence, they are all optional. We will add texture. Okay, damn the lightning. We will add text shadow to make the text more readable. To do this, we'll go to text options, text effects, open up shadow, and then we'll add a bottom right shadow. You can change how the shadow looks, but I'll leave it as is. We can also choose to add some shadows to the chart itself by selecting the chart itself, going to effects, going to chart options first because we're still in text options, going to effects, open up shadow if it's not already open, and then we'll add a bottom right shadow as well. You can also change how the shadow looks depending on your taste, but for me, I'll leave it as is. And finally, we can choose to remove the legend, this thing right here. Now, I put this in last since this is a dangerous thing to do when visualizing data, since you actually want whoever you're working for or showing this to know what this graph is all about. But since we already have it all in the title, I can safely remove the legend for this graph. We can remove it by clicking this plus icon right here when we select the chart and then uncheck legend. We are now done with formatting this entire clustered column or the bar chart, so time to move on to formatting the line chart. This thing right here. Now for the line graph, we'll essentially be doing the same thing as we did for the clustered column right here. So I'll just slow down the video with parts that are a bit different compared to the bar chart. Now for this graph, we will select style 15 or the last style instead of style 4 like we did for our clustered column. Now for the colors, we will make the line lighter than the markers. The line is this thing. Hold on, why can I not select it? Anyway, that's the line. It just selects the markers, I don't know why. But first, we'll select the line obviously, and then set its color to green. After that, we will go to the marker, change its fill type to solid fill, and then change its color to a darker shade of green. Now as you can see, when you change from automatic to solid, hold on, let me go to marker. When you change from automatic to solid fill, it also gets an automatic border. We don't want that, so we'll just click on no line. If we deselect this, as you can see, the markers are indeed darker than the lines, and they also don't have weird blue outlines. And there we go. We're done formatting the line graph as well. We're finally done with our fourth task. We'll color the fourth task status to green. And let's move on to our final task. Now our last task right here, it's pretty vague, but I know what to add to our charts to make it more interactive and more easy to compare certain points of data. We will add in a slicer for our clustered column and a timeline for our line graphs. Now those two things are just basically interactive blocks or menus that can add data filters. to your charts. Now, I notice here that I forgot to hide this, so we'll hide this now. We'll go to the Graphs tab, and then now we'll first add a slicer. We will just select the bar chart itself, go to Pivot Table Analyze, and then insert Slicer. We will select Country, hold on, and we'll put it right over here. I'm moving it using the resizing points because I currently have Snap to Grid turned on, so it just looks neat and nice. After that, we will change its style to a more greenish color by selecting the slicer, and then going to the slicer tab, and then selecting this greenish style over here in the slicer styles. This slicer right here, like I explained earlier, allows us to filter data in our tables in the other sheets, which is then reflected in our chart over here. Let me show you. Let me first unhide 2022 sales by country. Like as you can see here, it only shows Iraq. But then if we go to graphs and then let's compare China or India and India, if we go to 2022 sales by country, as you can see, the pivot table itself also changed. And if I'm looking here, apparently we made 7 more sales in China compared to India. Looks like we need to improve our equipment in India. To clear the filter, just click on this button right here, and that will return things to normal. Let me also hide the 2022 sales by country sheet again. And there we go. Now for our line chart, we'll select, no, not line chart, line graph. We will select it and instead add in a timeline in Pivot Chart Analyze. We will select sales date, and we have our timeline. We'll put it right below, why is it not running? Right below our line graph. How big? There we go. If it feels like it's being cut off, just select one and then select it all again. Now we will obviously first change its formatting to a more greenish color like this one. Now a timeline is very similar to a slicer, in which it allows us to compare or filter specific points in time in our line graph. We can even change this to days, quarters, or even years if we want to. I'm lagging. Quarters or even years if we want to, but we'll just stick to months. Since we're done with both, time to go to tasks and color the 5th task status to green. Finally, we're finished for the day. Now, before you leave, I also have another thing to share, and that you can watch the 2 previous videos right here. Once again, this was Minimalism Excel, and I hope to see you next time.